As I said in an earlier podcast, we are still in a heat wave here on April 17th, 2024 in Mumbai, and I don't run the AC, so it's tremendously hot, and I have a fan running instead, and it's introducing some noise, so I'm trying to be sure it's not disruptive, but if it is, please message me and I can always redo it. So we were looking at cognitive dissonance, cognitive bias, our resistance to change and knowledge. There is a more pernicious aspect of this in bending information, which leads to motivated reasoning as well. Human beings cannot help bending incoming information to fit our beliefs and subconsciously updating our recollections of previously held beliefs. So we keep fitting facts to our beliefs or ignore the facts when they don't conform to our beliefs. In situations of uncertainty and ambiguity, contradictory information causes psychological discomfort and results in human beings subconsciously trying to make the information fit existing beliefs and to avoid situations that increase such dissonance. This phenomenon has been described for millennia, but has found its way into scientific accounts through Ibn Khaldun's seminal work in the 14th century. It's now called cognitive dissonance or confirmation bias and causes human beings to subconsciously select, organize, and distort incoming information to match their preferred and existing beliefs. With social media and the 24-hour news cycles, the amount of information being thrown at us is increased tremendously, but we never know what is already filtered for you with the information providers' cognitive biases already, and the search engines, as I said before, keep giving you what you are looking for and not any contradictory view, so you can just get into this echo chamber of confirmation bias, which can be very difficult to get out and can be dangerous in many ways. It means that two people processing the same information may interpret it entirely differently without consciously considering how they reframe it to resolve the dissonance between the information and their beliefs. So you get rid of the cognitive dissonance by conveniently rearranging the information or ignoring facts, and everybody is doing it. However, the more entrenched we are in our preferences, ideas, policies, or ideologies, the more liable to cognitive dissonance we become, and some politicians are very good at exploiting this as well. Compare this to the apparent inability of the international community to think outside the dominant paradigm of market capitalism when addressing sustainability challenges, as we discussed before in chapter 2, or to your friends and colleagues who cannot conceive of these challenges or the changes needed in their lifestyles to address them. Cognitive dissonance is a formidable challenge indeed, one that is skillfully used by actors wanting to preserve the status quo or at least delay change to profit for themselves as long as possible. For instance, by actively cultivating a sense of uncertainty and ambiguity concerning climate change, irrespective of the entire scientific community agreeing on its main causes, principles, and scale of consequences. So people are very good at using IPCC reports themselves to raise doubts, and people are happily accepting the doubts because that conforms with their prior held beliefs and cognitive biases. So this is the prop for cognitive dissonance, which facilitates denial. So when you have facts contradicting your beliefs, you're just going to bury your head in the sand and ignore everything. So motivated reasoning follows along these lines, where you are being more active than bending information. You are also using reasoning to convince yourself and others of what is reality. Although cognitive biases are crucial, resistance to knowledge and change can also be driven more directly by our goals, values, and desires. People are motivated by such normative frameworks to arrive at particular conclusions or decisions and attempt to construct rational justifications for their desired conclusions or decisions that will persuade others. So normative here basically means you have certain cultural disposition or political orientation that makes you come to conclusions that are consistent with your beliefs, but now you want to use motivated reasoning to convince others as well. It means they bias their justification on the desirability of a particular belief or action rather than on a plausible interpretation of all empirical evidence. They reason their way to their favored conclusions or decisions with their goals, values, and desires, influencing how evidence is collected, arguments made, and memories recalled. Although related to cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias, this phenomenon of motivated reasoning is called motivated reasoning because it captures the tendency of individuals to unconsciously conform assessment of factual information to some goal collateral to assessing the truth. So truth is not something that we simply accept. Actually, we assess it and we can bend it and then reorient it, let's say. As such, motivated reasoning flips the conventional relationship between beliefs and evidence around at the same time as people are limited to only drawing conclusions for which they can muster sufficient evidence. In that way, the reasoning process is more like a lawyer defending a client than a judge or a scientist seeking the truth. So Hendricks and Westergaard put it this way: motivated reasoning turns the relationship between ideas and facts on its head. Ideally, you base your ideas and opinions on facts. However, when using motivated reasoning, you start at the other end with a fixed idea and only accept the facts that back it up. So if you think about the scientific process, we collect data, we look at the data, analyze it, and build a hypothesis. Then we collect more data to test the hypothesis. If the hypothesis is validated sufficiently by new data, then you make it a theory, and then until some data contradicts the theory, this is the accepted scientific finding. But in reality, let's say take some candidate in a big country, rich country, educated country, who keeps saying amazing things, and some people do not care, or they accept or they amplify the message because somehow he represents something that they want, something they think they will get out of him being the president. So they can ignore everything, even though the same things he is saying may appear completely unreasonable, false, and fabricated, and so on for others. They see it as clear as daylight that the person is talking nonsense, but there will be one group who just don't see any problem, or they ignore that there is a problem. So they get rid of the cognitive dissonance because they can focus on just the parts he's saying that actually benefits them. Right? So there are numerous studies of motivated reasoning in various contexts, including risk and sustainability challenges, showing the many tricks people use to reach the conclusions they want to reach. So often you have a conclusion in mind and you keep seeking data to confirm your preconceived conclusion. So this is a hypothesis driven data collection rather than data driving the hypothesis. Plausible interpretations of all empirical evidence are the first casualties, since people are not after the truth but after arguments supporting their views. Motivated reasoning is indeed a daunting challenge for safe and sustainable societies. However, after reviewing the vast scientific literature on motivated reasoning, Mercier and Sperber conclude that most of the often depressing and seemingly bizarre research findings make perfect sense once you consider motivated reasoning as having evolved not to assist us in finding the truth, but to help us win arguments, persuade, and manipulate other people. Okay, so Thucydides, or Thucydides, I don't know how it's pronounced, an ancient Greek historian and general, was amongst the first to note motivated reasoning in how human beings rationalize their beliefs and actions. Each of these things in my podcast that I say I don't know how to pronounce, I can do homework and learn it, but I'm a bit lazy, okay? Sorry. If that is false, I will be sad. I do not want to be sad, therefore it is true. Very easy to conform the information to your beliefs because you don't want to be sad, because if it turns out to be opposing to your beliefs or the conclusions you want, then you will be depressed, right? So social proof and social conformity are two related mechanisms explaining how human beings tend to believe and do the same things as others. However, this overall tendency is not detached from the number of people holding the opinion or practicing the activity, which has different sway if 50 or 5,000 people are imagined to do so. This overall tendency is not detached from the number of people, so more the people, more you feel confident that you are in the right place. This phenomenon is called the bandwagon effect or contagion effect and denotes a process of public opinion impinging upon itself, amplifying it, creating an echo chamber, and accelerating the diffusion of a belief or action, the more people getting on board with it. So bandwagon keeps growing very quickly and become a big caravan. Although the term was initially coined with reference to the actual use of bandwagons in American presidential campaigns, during the latter half of the 19th century, as we'll see in a minute, the bandwagon effect had obtained its current scientific meaning by the end of the 20th century. It suggests that the probability of an individual adopting the belief or action increases with proportion of the group already done so in a self-reinforcing process of popularity. And smart politicians use existing bandwagons to then build them and get their message across, which often is untrue in terms of what the evidence suggests. The bandwagon effect can drive public opinion in whatever direction and is linked to the social tipping points discussed earlier, the Malcolm Gladwell type ideas. Imagine what change could ensue if the bandwagon started to roll in a more sustainable direction. So that's kind of an optimistic view that maybe there are ways to create social tipping points, and I have podcasts on that because there is some evidence showing that there are levers in the system which can be used to tip the social movement in the right direction, like sustainability challenge and addressing it. So this is a 19th century political cartoon of a bandwagon, and you can see there is some poor voter left on the side, whereas the others on the bandwagon are trying to hold on for dear life and stay on the bandwagon. Okay, so just to read a little bit more, yeah, this keeps going, so maybe I should come back and continue in the next podcast because this one is already about 12 and a half minutes. So see you in the next podcast.